Okay, guys, we're going to go over very quickly how to read a graphic novel. So over the holiday, you are going to be reading March, Book 1, which is by John Lewis. Now, John Lewis was a representative in the House of Representatives for many, many years. He was a friend of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was a leader in the African American community and in the civil rights movement. So he chose to tell his story, to tell his biography, essentially, in a series of 3 graphic novels. And the first one is called March, Book 1. So you'll notice this is the cover. There are certain elements to a graphic novel, the cover, which sort of sets the scene. So you have John Lewis and other people sitting at the counter closed, so at the lunch counter, so he participated in the lunch counter protests, and in marching, and that was on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which is what we're going to see when we get into this. So this is the first page. Now I have this zoomed out so you can see the whole page, but in order to see what the text is, we're going to have to zoom in a little bit. But it's important to notice that all this white space around, it makes you focus just on this. And it's hard to tell what this is until you zoom in a little. And if you look closer, you have this little, it's almost indecipherable, but then you have John. Okay, now this squiggly line indicates it's a thought. You'll often see bubbles as well, indicating it's a thought, whereas the straight or the caret indicates that it's dialogue. And you just have someone saying John. But if you look closely at this image, you have water, you have railings, and you have a bridge. And then very faintly, you can see the outlines of shadows. Okay. So the question is asked, John. And then we have a blank page again. And then we get into our first true page. And it says, can you swim? So you've got the Edmund Pettus Bridge. You have the line of people marching over it. And the first question is, John, can you swim? No. Well, neither can I, but we might have to. Okay. Now, in reading graphic novels, you always go from the top and the left to the right. So it's similar to reading a book. Here we have a top panel that covers the entire side. So it starts on the left at the top. So you go from here down to the left panel. Each of these squares is a panel. No, well, neither can I. And it's connecting, but we might have to. And this shows the big long line because now we see why. At the other end, we have all of the sheriffs. So it's important also when you look at these to pay attention to the gutters, which are the spaces between, okay? White space on the outer edges and in between. And you'll notice something about the images themselves. Everything here is black and white, and that's an intentional choice. And I'll let you read into that about why things are black and white. You'll also notice that these panels don't perfectly line up. Okay, they're different sizes, they're out of joint, and that sense of things not being quite right, not being perfect, gives you an idea of the situation. It builds tension. Okay, we get zoom out into this bridge now. We get close-ups of the men with their guns and their gas masks, of the dog snarling, and then we get, this is an unlawful assembly. Now notice that this text, or this dialogue box has jagged edges. And that's designed so you know that he's shouting. Okay, it's just not normal speech, it is shouting. And it continues on with the shouting. Your march is not conducive to the public safety. You are ordered to disperse and go back to your church or your homes. Okay, again, these panels are out of joint. There's different amounts of gutters between. Sometimes the gutters disappear. All of that helps paint the picture that this is not a normal, peaceful situation. It is violent. There are things, tension is being racketed up. People are shouting, dogs are snarling. All of these things play a factor. Okay. Now our next one. May we have a word with the major. There is no word to be had. Now notice I'm going left to right, top to bottom. Okay. May we have a word with the major. There is no word to be had, and we've got even more stress. You have 2 minutes to turn around and go back to your church. And we have the big long, and notice this one matches up. It fills the page left to right. It's a bit more calm. And he says we should kneel and pray. Okay. The troopers advance. Okay. And they're kneeling and praying, and you can see in these bubbles, okay, that they're praying, they're communicating. And then we get this. Now these aren't square panels anymore. Now they are odd shapes, they're disjointed, they overlap. It's giving you a sense of so many things happening at once, nothing being right. It's all chaos. The troops are marching in. We're getting finally our sound effects, the whap, the crack, the thump. And these are things that you might know from traditional comic books. And then tear gas coming in. You have these small boxes saying, get them, get the N words. Okay. You have the sound effect here of the canister coming in, tink, clink, and then shh, as the gas is released. Again, everything out of joint, everything overlapping, chaos is happening. Okay. And then we change perspective slightly. So we start here, still disjointed, okay? And you get a kind of from outside look. This is John Lewis, okay? And he's oof, thud, and he's dragging him. And then you focus in to what John is seeing, which is his nails scraggling at the pavement, the shadow of the officer above him with his billy club ready to whack him. You get an inset, okay, and it's darkness. So what has happened to him, can we assume? Assuming that billy club came down and now he's unconscious. He goes raggedy at the edges and then black. And now we have the start of the book. Here's the title page, okay? So it becomes a question of why does he start with this particular instance? Because once we get past this, now we're in Washington, D.C. in 2009, okay? And we pick up at a specific point, which will become clear later. Why start with this? And I would argue it's an attention grabber. It's a hook. It gets you interested in what's happening. The tension, the violence. You want to know, how did we get there? What is happening? Okay. And so with that grabbing you, now he can go back in and he can set the scene and start telling his story. Okay. So as you move through this graphic novel, pay attention to the images themselves, the shades of light and dark, the panels, the gutters, the white space, any captions that occur, thought bubbles, dialogue bubbles, all of these things play a part, okay? So enjoy this novel. It's very interesting to read. Pay close attention to the images and be ready to talk about it when you come back. Have a good holiday.